If you've been following along with the Sengoku period, or you're just starting to get into it, you've probably run into a few names and titles that keep coming up: Shogun, Daimyo, Retainer, Emperor. And if you've ever paused and thought, okay, I think I know what these mean, but do I actually know what these mean? This video is for that moment. At the very top, on paper, was the Emperor. The Emperor of Japan was considered a sacred figure, divine lineage, descended from the sun goddess, the highest symbol of the nation. But by the time the Sengoku period began, the Emperor had almost no real political power. And here's a quick reason why. Centuries earlier, military clans had grown so powerful that they simply took over the actual work of governing. The emperor kept his sacred status, his ceremonies, his titles, but the decisions, armies, territory, war, those moved elsewhere. He was the symbol, not the ruler. And that gap between who looked powerful and who actually held power, that's the story of the entire era. The person who actually held power, in theory, was the shogun. The word roughly means supreme military commander. The shogun ran what was called the bakufu, the military government. He was nominally appointed by the emperor, but in practice, the shogun was the one making real decisions. Armies, taxes, territory, that was the shogun's world. For over 100 years before the Sengoku period, that shogun was from the Ashikaga family, based in Kyoto. But here's where it gets interesting. By the mid-1400s, the Ashikaga Shogunate had started losing its grip. Local lords were getting stronger, more independent. The shogun was still sitting in Kyoto, but fewer and fewer people were actually listening. By the time the Sengoku period began, the shogun had become almost as symbolic as the emperor above him, which meant someone else was ready to step in. And those someone else's were the daimyo. Daimyo literally means great name. These were the feudal lords who actually controlled the land. Each daimyo ruled his own domain, his own territory, his own army, his own laws. Some domains were small, some were enormous, spanning multiple provinces. Each daimyo led what we call a clan. Now, clan doesn't just mean family. Think of it less like a family tree and more like a family-run kingdom. Yes, there's a bloodline at the center, but around that core, there are retainers who have served for generations, allies brought in through marriage, and sometimes even people formally adopted to strengthen the line. Think of it as a name, a territory, an army, and a reputation, all built up carefully over generations. The Oda, the Tokugawa, the Hojo, the Takeda, the Uesugi, the Mori, the Shimazu, these names are going to come up again and again. If the shogun was the national leader in title, the daimyo were the ones who actually held the ground beneath their feet. And during the Sengoku period, when the shogunate collapsed, every daimyo became a power unto themselves, which is exactly why it turned into 100 years of war. Now, no daimyo ruled alone. Behind every powerful lord was a network of retainers, men bound to him by loyalty and service. Think of them like the generals who commanded his armies, the administrators who kept his lands running, and the advisors who helped him make the decisions that kept everything together. Retainers weren't just soldiers, they were the ones who made the whole operation work. And loyalty, real, tested loyalty, was everything. A retainer who stayed faithful when things got difficult was worth more than an army. A retainer who switched sides could bring a lord's entire world crashing down. You're going to see this play out constantly in the stories ahead. Hideyoshi Toyotomi, one of the most powerful figures of the entire era, started his life as a retainer of Oda Nobunaga, a man who served, who earned trust, and who eventually rose to reshape Japan. Retainers are not background characters, they are half the story. One more term, and you've probably heard this one: samurai. The word itself comes from a root meaning to serve. These were the warrior class of feudal Japan, trained fighters who served lords, protected domains, and fought in wars. Now, most samurai served as retainers, but it's worth knowing that not every retainer was a samurai. Some were administrators, strategists, or diplomats who never picked up a sword. The two terms overlap, but they're not quite the same thing. And then there's one related term worth knowing. Ronin, a samurai who had lost his lord through death, through defeat, through the chaos of war, and now had no one to serve. Adrift. The word literally means wave man, someone floating without an anchor. During the Sengoku period, as lords fell and clans collapsed, there were a lot of ronin. So, emperor, shogun, daimyo, retainer, samurai. These are the terms you're going to keep hearing. And now when you do, you'll know exactly what they mean and why they mattered. Hey, I'm Ren, and this was the terminology video for the Sengoku era. If you made it this far, thank you. It genuinely means a lot. I hope this video was worth your time. See you in the next one.